Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Here, as always, with my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. We've made it. It is now, to timestamp this, Saturday morning. We are 2 days away from first ball. Hopefully the rain can stay away. I know there's some roof. We do have a roof at least, so it won't all be for wash, but let's get that rain out of the way. I know they're having trouble finishing the qualies, which is obviously very important to complete the draw. And obviously for the people who are trying to get themselves an $80,000 payday, basically, because if you make the main draw, even if you lose first round, you'll still make around $80,000, which is great. Steve, fourth Grand Slam of the year, the final one. It's in your home state. You ready to go?
Oh, absolutely. I do my daily drive out there. It only takes about an hour each way, and it's close enough to be my hometown. Once was my hometown. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it immensely.
Awesome. I figure let's start with some like high level themes. I'll throw out there for you just to hear your thoughts, and then we can go into some of the matches or some of the players specifically. Again, we don't like to project too forward because you know there's going to be some upsets, and we're going to record again during the middle weekend, the Labor Day weekend. So we'll do a mid tournament recap as well. So with that, I think, everyone saw that classic match in Cincinnati between Carlos and Novak. Everyone's eager to see that final again. There's a lot of tennis that needs to be played before we get there. The one player I think a lot of people have mentioned that can maybe, I don't know, spoil the party is Jannik Sinner, and Jannik is actually in Carlos Alcaraz's quarter.
Yeah, and we all remember that. It's just astonishing five-setter a year ago that went into through the night and into the wee small hours of the morning with Carlos saving a match point, pulling out the four set, still going down a break in the fifth, and finally winning in five. And then Carlos, of course, had already beaten Chiles from a breakdown in the fifth. He beat Tiafoe in five and went on to win the title over Casper Ruud. But that match with Sinner was the pivotal match of the tournament, and perhaps it was the match of the tournament, period. Sinner did beat Carlos in Miami earlier this year when Carlos had some cramping issues, and Carlos has said he sees him from his generation as his chief rival. So I think we're lucky to get that as a quarterfinal, and it'd be fascinating rematch of what we saw a year ago, which was so extraordinary.
Another interesting potential quarterfinal on the women's side of the draw is Coco Gauff in Iga Swiatek's quarter. Again, this is the fourth slam in a row that they have been in each other's quarter. Obviously, we know Coco just finally not only won a set over Iga in that was the eighth time they played, but actually beat her just last week in Cincinnati. So going to be, obviously Coco has a ton of confidence going in, but to potentially have to play her in the quarter and then beat her again, that's going to be a challenge, not only for Coco, but for both players.
Yeah, I look at that one a little differently, David, than the Sinner Alcaraz. I think Sinner Alcaraz in the quarters is fine because Jannik has not yet established himself quite yet in that top tier or top four. He's going to get there soon, I believe. But I think that's fitting, and the fans will love it. I feel a little badly about Coco and Iga. I don't want to see either one go out in the quarters, and that's what's going to happen. One of them is going to be gone, as you pointed out. They've constantly been in each other's path at these majors. But Coco, coming off the win over Iga the last time, winning two of her last three tournaments, wasn't quite enough to get her into top four status, so that this could have been, at the worst, a semifinal. So the fans are in for a treat. We're going to lose somebody very significant in that round, and I think it's going to be likely go right down to the wire. Coco with the confidence coming off the last win, Iga looking to avenge that loss and reassert her supremacy. So, and the New York fans cheering Coco on.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe a night match, Steve. Maybe a night match quarterfinal with Coco.
It'll be a night match. I can't imagine it being anything else. The television would insist on it, and they should. And yeah, no, Iga's going to have to be very composed and go in there realizing that, treating this as if she's playing some kind of Fed Cup match, and that's going to be the atmosphere, and it's in New York, and just accept it. And Iga is very disciplined and determined, so I think she'll be okay. But I think it's more the boost that Coco could get. On the other hand, you got to do more than just accept crowd support. You got to go out and produce, which Coco did the last time around. So I see this time around being a very hard-fought three-set match. going either way. I can't wait to see what happens in that encounter.
Well, let's just hope, Steve, that we're talking about this match in more depth the next time we
Yeah,
record next weekend.
yeah.
So let's not jump the gun yet. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's hope we're talking about this matchup more in depth next weekend. The other person I want to throw out on the women's side, I want to hear your thoughts. I know we're both big fans of her. Is Jessica Pegula. And she is yet to pass the quarterfinal of a slam. In her presser, I believe it was yesterday, someone said, "Hey, what does it have to take for you to get past a quarter of a slam?" And she said, "I got to win a quarter of a slam." I thought that was a good answer.
Yeah.
Funny, obviously. She's got a good personality. Is this the one, Steve? Is this the one?
Yeah, listen, she was so close at Wimbledon, 4-1 in the final set, point for 5-1. She, Vondrousova, she was so close to making it to the penultimate round, and she knows it. And she knows that this was a player who was on a roll, as we saw what happened on the final Saturday. So she lost to the champion. I think this is the one, because again, she had a great summer. She had her tournament win up in Canada prior to Coco triumphing in Cincinnati. So Jess picked up a lot of confidence. It didn't matter that she lost early in Cincinnati. She's feeling like she's playing great tennis right now, and I feel like, yeah, this is the ideal time for her to make that breakthrough. And I expect her to do so, even though the draw is not easy by any means. I think she again will have enormous crowd support in New York, and the fans are going to be, they've become increasingly aware of her year after year as she established herself as a top 3 player, went down to 4, came back to 3. They know she's been right up there in the upper echelons of the sport, and they've come to have a lot of affection for her too, just the way they have for Coco. So I think Pegula, this could and should be the breakthrough for her to at least make it to a semi.
And as you kind of previewed a couple episodes ago, wouldn't it be something to have a Pegula Goff final in the U.S. Open? It's noted that both of them are on opposite sides of the draw, so it could possibly happen.
Oh, it's not inconceivable. Obviously, they both got to play great to get there. Obviously, the big hurdle for Coco conceivably would be the match with Iga, which is hard to imagine that it won't come off. But yeah, I mean, again, given the summers that each of them had, I still see that as a real possibility. But let's see what we're saying in our middle of the tournament podcast next weekend.
And then I want to hear your thoughts on the trio. We've talked about them in a couple episodes now. The U.S. men of Tommy Paul, Taylor Fritz, and Frances Tiafoe. I don't think we said it last episode. You had kind of given your analysis on each 3 of them going into Cincy, how the results played out in Cincy didn't really change your mind. But Tommy Paul, Taylor Fritz, and Frances Tiafoe, I think Tommy has a wonderful opportunity here to make a run.
He does, and they're all the guys you mentioned. They're all in the Djokovic half of the draw. They're in the bottom half of the draw, and Tiafoe is seated 10th, Tommy Paul is seated 14th, and of course Taylor's the highest seed among the group at 9. And I mean, yes, they're going to all have their chances. Taylor's got the toughest of the draws. He's in that section. We're expecting to get a Tsitsipas Djokovic quarterfinal. Fritz will be looking a way to push his way in there, but it's a tough section. But Tommy Paul, he's up there in the Casper Ruud territory, and Tiafoe is as well. So there is a real opportunity. And I would say of the 2, I like Tommy's chances better than Frances's right now. However, I never underestimate Frances, especially in the exhilarating setting in Arthur Ashe Stadium that he's come to love so much over the last few years, particularly last year when he came within 1 set of the final.
I'm looking at Tommy's draw right now, and I'm thinking a 3rd round match with Davidovich Fokina, which would be there'd be a lot of highlights in that match. If Tommy were to get through that match, I don't think it's going to be easy at all. That's going to be a battle.
Oh, it is. Yeah, Davidovich Fokina, he's a very explosive, fiery player, fiery personality, and very dangerous. And when he's inspired, he can play top of the line tennis, and Tommy will know that going in. I just have to believe that over the course of a best of 5 set match, and with a New York crowd that's going to tend to get under Davidovich Fokina's skin, not deliberately, they're just going to be cheering for his opponent. And but Davidovich Fokina could well take that a bit personally. So I just feel that over best of 5, Tommy with a slight edge there. It might even go 5, but I like his chances if it comes off.
Yep. Let's look at just a few matches on both the women's side and the men's side. We'll start with the women's. One player that I think our listeners should try to take a look. I don't know if it'll be televised. It probably won't be, but Iga's at the top of the draw. The third player listed in the draw, her name is Claire Agunye. Her sister is a very good college tennis player, just recently graduated University of Kansas, my alma mater. Claire V just won the Wimbledon. She won junior Wimbledon, and she just won nationals out in San Diego. If she gets through her first round, which will be tough, she will then most likely play Iga in the second round. It would be a heck of an experience for her. But if you guys get a chance, whether it's on YouTube or Tennis Channel highlights, whatever, check out Claire V. She works at the Moratoglu Tennis Academy, so I know Patrick works with her closely. Another person I want to ask Steve about, and I'm looking at her draw, and it's not that bad at all, is Jennifer Brady. She's in that top half with Iga, but to get to that match, it's not inconceivable that she can play Iga later on in the tournament.
We saw some flashes of her old great form over the summer. I mean, she's playing well. There's no doubt about it. She seems like she's kind of reacquired her, she's rediscovered her old game rather quickly. Yeah, and so she's going to be very inspired to play in New York at the Open. The memories of 2020 and playing Naomi Osaka in that just top of the line, remarkable 3-set semifinals. So she's got great memories of that. Believes that she can reproduce that kind of magic in tennis. And let's see. I mean, we shouldn't ask too much of her this soon. On the other hand, I've just been shocked at how quickly she's looked like her old self. So, and again, the crowds like her. She's in another of their American favorites. So let's see what she can do in this event.
As a previous guest and friend of the pod, we'll be pulling for Jen. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm shocked at how well the level that she was playing right out of the chute, and just hopefully keep those injuries away. And let's see if she can make a little run here. We've talked about Coco. Nothing's really changed your mind as far as her confidence, her playing, the addition of Brad. You're all guns firing with Coco. You're hoping she makes a serious run at this thing.
Oh, absolutely. To win DC, to win Cincinnati, she loses to Pegula in a hard-fought match in between. What more could she have asked of herself? So, and as we've discussed so many times during that span, seems like she's got sort of a changed demeanor, which could well be the influence of Brad Gilbert. But she just seems like a different person out in that court, not only a different player, but a different person in a very positive way. So, no, nothing's changed my mind. I don't think she's going to feel undue pressure, David. Yeah, she knows a lot of people are talking about her, but she's ready for that now. She's ready to embrace it and accept it. And she realizes she's playing right now the best tennis of her career. So I feel like Coco's going to be ready for this. She's going to deal with it.
If you were in the camp of Ons Jabeur right now, are you confident? Are you worried? She played one tournament since that really disheartening loss at Wimbledon. She did get to the semis in Cincy, I believe. She kind of like messed up her foot a little bit.
Yeah.
She did not default. She got through it. She lost to Sabalenka. Once it was pretty much hobbled. It wasn't much of a match after that. But if you're in her camp right now, are you feeling pretty good? Are you still a little concerned with her mindset going into New York?
Yeah, I think the latter, David. I mean, if I'm in her camp and I'm her, I'm cautiously optimistic. She knows what she can do when she's at the peak of her power. She has nice memories of a year ago when reaching the final and losing to Iga. She had a great tournament, following up on her Wimbledon final a year ago, then goes back to the final of Wimbledon this year. So she feels like she's been knocking on the door. On the other hand, that was not great preparation. Part of it were the psychological wounds that she didn't want to come back too soon after Wimbledon because she was so disappointed in her performance there and in losing a third major final. So no, I'm only cautiously optimistic. She's going to try to she's going to try to sort of keep her mind focused more on what she did a year ago and how that was no accident to be in the final and she's going to get back there. But no, I'm not optimistic. I'd be pleasantly surprised if she had a great Open. If she does, terrific. Maybe the fact that people at this moment might not be expecting as much of her. But yeah, you have to have only cautious optimism if you're around her now, because that ideally she would have played at least one more tournament to be fully ready for this and maybe have something to show for it. Instead, the loss to Sabalenka, a slight injury, it's not great.
I would have. I mean, you read my mind. I would have felt more comfortable, even if she didn't win it, but play one extra tournament before Cincinnati just to get a few more matches in. Again, probably more of an emotional, like needed to stay away a little bit longer. But yeah, I would have felt a lot better if she played 2 tournaments heading in, and maybe getting to another semi, let's say. But the crowd loves her, the players love her, the fans love her, everyone loves her. So hopefully she can shake off that disappointment and make another run in New York. And then the interesting final pairing that I want to ask you about in the first round: Paula Badosa versus Venus Williams. I mean, it's going to be televised, I would assume, right? And I think a lot of eyes are going to be on that match. You have thoughts on who gets through that one?
That to me was that caught my eye more than any of the first round match as well. I mean, I like Badosa's chances. I do think she's going to be apprehensive. I do think it's going to unnerve her a bit. She's a very high strung player. I don't mean that too critically, but she's very intense out there, and sometimes under pressure she's willed it a bit, but she's a great player, and obviously on paper she wins the match. But Venus has been playing very well, and Venus again will have great crowd support and the memories of her triumphs in New York. And I feel like Venus might steal a set. That's how I look at it. I see Venus maybe steals a set. I still believe Badosa wins the match, but it's going to be very competitive based on Venus's form and the fact that Badosa is still not quite what she was a few years ago. She's not quite there. And we all know she's been in this relationship with Tsitsipas, and who's to say how distracting that's been for her. She's put a lot of emotional energy into watching his matches and supporting him. So we'll see. But I do think she's going to be tight, and I think she's going to have to play her way through it and past it. And eventually I think she will, but I see it going 3.
That's going to be a fun one to watch and see how that plays out. Okay, let's switch over to the men's side again. We talked about Carlos, but there's a first round match that I think is interesting, and Sasha Zverev against Alex Vukic. And Zverev had a really good Cincinnati. Again, his results have kind of been a little bit not as consistent as Sasha would have liked, but he is playing well. But Vukic had a good summer. Now, I'm not going to pick Vukic to win that match. But I think it could be a lot closer than if people are just looking at the draw and you're going to automatically pen Zverev in for a win there. I think Zverev's going to have to work to get through that first round match.
Yeah, it's a tougher one than he might have wanted, David. I agree. It's not, I mean, ideally he would have liked to have played somebody that he felt that he could just go on automatic pilot and win 3-4 and 3 with a good serving performance and then gradually lift his game. He's going to feel like he better be in 4th round form in the first round. And he's going to need to treat it very seriously. And I think that likely that goes 4 pretty tight sets. I still like Zverev to win it, but I don't think he's going to breeze through that by any means. He'll be tested, and he expects to be tested. So the thing that I think what I like about him, what I saw in Cincinnati, and I hope continues, is that he's found balance on his second serve. We always worried about the extremes he went to on his second serve. He was either just pushing it in painfully, sometimes double faulting, not accelerating, which is hard to watch it, or he'd say, I'm going for a 135, I don't care. And sometimes he did a second serve ace, and sometimes he double faulted. Didn't like that type of formula at all. Now he's just, it looks so good in Cincinnati, a lot of depth and not going, maybe 100 miles an hour, nothing crazy. And the double faults have diminished greatly. And so I think as long as he's still in that state and over the summer, that's what I saw, then I think he still wins, but there'll be some tight sets. There might be a tiebreaker or 2. He's definitely going to have to work hard in that match.
And I know we mentioned the top 3 U.S. men: Tommy Paul, Taylor Fritz, Francis Tiafoe. You've seen recently, a few days ago, John Isner announced this will be his last tournament. Remember when John came on the scene, huge size, huge serve, did well that summer. I think he made the final of his first pro. I think Andy beat him in one of the warm-up tournaments. But I remember then in the Open, I don't remember if it was the same summer, maybe a year or 2 later in the Open, John beat Andy in a really entertaining close.
Yeah, a couple of years later. Yeah, 09. That was a 5-setter. It was an incredible match. Yeah, listen, he's been heading for this all year. His results have been so far inferior to what we saw from him in the past, and he's just hasn't been winning many matches, and he hasn't looked like he believes in himself anymore. Maybe the serve is slightly less than what it once was. Who's to say? But I hope for his sake that he could maybe go a few rounds. It's a wise decision, and he knows he's had a longer career than he could ever have envisioned. So it'll
He's
be
still tired from that 70-68 match in Wimbledon, Steve. He's still getting over that one.
So. Yeah, exactly. Against Nicholas Mahut. No, I think it's nice. The crowd will be aware of it. He's made the announcement. There's going to be that extra sentiment on his side, and I hope he can make it, a positive farewell and bow out, on the best possible terms, either in a good performance and defeat in the first round, or just keep going a couple of rounds. That's all a bonus to him right now. But I do think he made the right choice because the handwriting has been on the wall all season long.
Another player that's unseeded, and I view this person as kind of like a floater in the draw, and he's dangerous. It still doesn't look right that he's unseeded to me, and I know there's injuries, but interesting first round match. Matteo Berrettini, unseeded Matteo Berrettini versus Ugo Humbert. It's going to be an interesting match. I think Matteo, if he can work himself into this tournament, he can make a little run. I mean, yeah, Rublev would be his potential third round match, but I mean, Matteo's damn good.
Yeah, and he's been looking to snap out of this. It's been a hard road for him across this season, and this would be the ideal time to sort of start turning things around so that he can be productive down the stretch of this toward the end of this season, right to the end to set up next year. Yeah, the Humbert match, a tricky opponent. That he won't have an easy time. If he can get by that, he can make a run here for sure. But I keep waiting for him. I keep thinking it's going to happen. He's had a few fleeting moments where he's looked like his old self. And I'd like to see it happen here. He's a great crowd pleaser. Let's face it. The audiences love him everywhere he competes, with good reason, because he's such an explosive player. So I hope Matteo fares well at this Open. I really do.
Me too. And I want to ask your thoughts about Sebastian Korda. Again, his season started so promising with his win over Medvedev, his run in Australia. Injuries then have followed. The results have been inconsistent. He just pulled out of Winston-Salem. He rolled his ankle. We're going to see how that affects his performance in New York. He has a tough first round match. He plays Fucsovics's first round, and that guy is big and strong and dangerous opponent. Even if Sebastian was fully healthy, that match is not going to be easy.
Absolutely right. And I don't like the fact that another injury, even if it ends up being a bit of a minor injury, he's had it, we saw him just start the year blazing, match point against Djokovic in Adelaide in the final. He loses a great match there, quarters of the Australian Open. He was really on a roll, and you felt like this was going to be a big season, and then he hurt his wrist and he was gone for so long, and it hasn't been the same since. And then to have another injury right now on the heels of the Open. I agree. I mean, if he's not if he's not somewhere between 80 and 90%, he loses that match, in my view. He's got to be really top of the line. That's a guy that's going to make him work very, very hard. He's a total professional, Fucsovics. So I think I'll be hoping for the best for Sebastian, but I don't like the fact that, he'd beaten Gasquet in that 3-set quarterfinal, and then he ends up defaulting out of that tournament. Not ideal to have to be worried about his ankle at this stage when he should be practicing hard. He'll probably have to lighten his practice sessions and get this thing treated and make sure the ankle is okay. But that's not what you want in the days leading up to a first round match at the Open.
Correct. Interesting first round matchup here between Stefanos Tsitsipas, Milos Raonic. Raonic has played very little, but you know how dangerous he could be. He beat Francis Tiafoe a couple tournaments ago. Tsitsipas has had two poor performances up to his standards at past U.S. Opens. You remember the great match, Carlos. I guess you could say that was almost Carlos' coming out party. That was an incredible match 2 years ago, and then Steph lost early last year as well. He's looking to make a run at this thing. Not easy right out of the chute for Steph.
No, not at all. I mean, you're playing. See, he liked to get your rhythm in the first round and hit a lot of balls and get in some long rallies. It's not going to happen. And Milos also has that slice back in. He'll mix things up. But the big thing is, can can Stefanos cope with Milos's serve? And if Milos is having a great serving day, likely there are going to be some tiebreakers. It's going to be a nerve-wracking match for Tsitsipas, no doubt about it. I mean, he was pretty of all this top 8 seeds. I think in some ways he had the most unlucky draw to face Raonic, who's now sort of finding his bearings again. So I think that one could be very close. Could go either way, but it's not. It's going to be no easy ride for Tsitsipas.
And the last match I want to ask you about before I ask you for any other your thoughts before we wrap up is Felix Auger-Aliassime versus Mackenzie McDonald. And Felix, I feel like we kind of group Felix and Sevi a lot together, just because of the ups and downs with injuries this year. Felix versus Mackenzie, that should be a good one. Mackenzie beat Rafa in Australia, the first slam of the year. Obviously, Rafa was not 100%, but Mackenzie's had some pretty good results as of late. How do you see that one going?
The way that the Felix of a year ago, I would have said, no worse than 4 sets to Felix. Right now, it's almost a toss-up. I might even lean, believe it or not, slightly toward Mackenzie McDonald, because I think Felix's confidence is he's lost so much self-belief and he's been in such a slump, and he can't fully explain it. He had his share of injuries. I get it, but again, I mean, that's the kind of guy that's going to make him work really hard. And Felix better have an extraordinary serving day if he wants to get out of that. No, I think it's 50-50, but I almost go to McDonald based on recent form.
Understood. Okay. Again, before I wrap up, and we're going to do this again over Labor Day weekend, let's get the rain out of the way. I don't know if you've looked at the forecast in the next 7 days or not. Does the weather look pretty good? It looks pretty cool. It doesn't look like you're going to get any of that like Cincinnati brutal humidity that we had in the finals there.
No, and mostly I'm seeing mid to maybe at worst the highs at top the high 70s, but 75, 77 degree days. I'm encouraged by the forecast. That's what you want for the players. You don't want them in that 92 degree Cincinnati heat, where you worry about their health. So yeah, the first week's weather looks good, which leads me to believe likelihood is the second won't get that much hotter. It usually doesn't work. I hope it doesn't work that way and that it can stay that way the whole tournament. But the first week forecast, all told, is not bad.
Good. Anything else I missed before we wrap this one up? I know you're looking forward to getting out there.
No, I just think the draw is pretty balanced, and there's going to be we're eagerly anticipating that potential quarterfinal with Carlos and Sinner, and we're going to follow Novak's progress, and everybody's going to be hoping round by round that they keep winning and we can get another classic, another epic out of those two. But it still gets back to what you said at the beginning. It's the last major of the season, so these guys are looking at this as this is their last chance to salvage something substantial out of the season. So I think that always makes the Open, it gives it that extra intensity as the players, it's the end of the Grand Slam season. The rest of them are grouped pretty close together, but after this one, there's nothing to Australia. So this is where you want to leave it all on the court and get the job done.
Well said. Well, I'm ready. I know you're ready. I know you're even ready for this to be more of a distraction for you than the New York Yankees have been this season. You're locked in on the tennis. Yankees have not been up to your standards and other people's standards. So you're all in on the U.S. Open these next 2 weeks. Enjoy it, everybody, and can't wait to do this again with you, Steve, next weekend.
Yeah, back at you, David. I enjoyed it.